Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. The Bigger Picture, only on Money FM 89.3.
Good morning. This is The Bigger Picture. Me, Ryan Huang. And we've got more ideas laid out to revive the Singapore Exchange by market regulators, all part of the ongoing bid by the Equities Market Review Group to attract IPOs and investor interest. Among them, the MAS is proposing for disclosure requirements to be simplified to make the listing process easier and help firms provide more relevant information to investors. Here's another idea from the SGX RegCo. They are proposing to do away with the financial watchlist, originally meant as a way for persistently loss-making companies to try and turn it around and thereby exit this list. So are these ideas enough, or what more should we be looking at more closely? Helping us out this morning is Mak Yuen Teen. He is the Professor of Accounting and Director at the Centre for Investor Protection for the NUS Business School at the National University of Singapore. Good morning, Prof. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Ryan. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. We've got lots to unpack here. Of course, we've got to get your overview of how much you like these ideas. It seems like you've got a more disclosure-based push, and some might say all in the name of making the SGX great again. What do you make of it?
Well, I'm actually quite concerned about the proposals. I think we use the term streamlining a fair bit. Both MAS and SGX RegCo use the word streamlining, right? But basically, it's just cutting a lot of disclosure. And even this move to kind of cut down on public queries, for example, right? I mean, to me, that's inconsistent with moving to a more disclosure-based regime. So I kind of look at it and kind of say we are a bit schizophrenic about this, because we say we want to make it more disclosure-based. But actually, overall, if you look at it, we are actually reducing disclosures. Or we are taking actions which will make company maybe disclose less information.
Okay, let's unpack a couple of the things here we have in terms of the proposal ideas to flesh it out. And here's where the MAS is looking to align Singapore's disclosure requirements for secondary listings with international standards so that those who are looking to do a secondary listing in Singapore can use the same prospectus, so they don't need to tweak too much. What do you make of the risk here in terms of loosening these requirements?
I think the main thing is to ensure that the prospectus that is disclosed by these secondary listings are actually in line with international standards, right? And that assumption may not be true. For example, if you have a foreign, say a Chinese company incorporated in Cayman and listed in the US, and it may be called a foreign private issuer, it may be subject to lower disclosure requirements. So if we accept that and we basically say we assume that they are following the US requirements, they may not be. So I think one of the things to make sure is that actually those prospectuses released in the primary exchange actually complies with international standards.
Yeah, so there is a bit of a balancing act here in terms of trying to figure out where is that sweet spot. There was also a recent incident with the DFI Retail Group or Dairy Farm International, where it announced it was selling its Singapore food business, which includes cold storage and Giant, to Macro Value for $125 million. So this was not announced via corporate filing of SGX, partly because their primary listing was in London and is listed here via secondary listing in Singapore. Do you see this as an issue that needs to fix as well?
You see, this is the problem, right? Because when it comes to secondary listings, the listing rules don't apply, basically, except for a couple of minor rules here. So basically, the stock exchange here say they follow the home exchange. And of course, in this case, DFI Retail say, the London rules don't require it. The Jardine companies, and then DFI Retail is obviously part of this Jardine group. They are very unusual because, although their main listing is in London, they have very little trading in London. Most of the trading happens here. And a number of them are in our STI. So they have a lot of trading here, but they don't follow the rules here. And then basically they say in this case, the rules in London doesn't require this kind of disclosure. The Jardine Group of companies are a bit unusual. Most secondary listings are the opposite, which is that they don't follow the rules here, but there's very little trading that happens here. But the Jardine companies, most of the trading actually happens here. Kind of have your cake and eat it too. You have most of your trading here, but you don't have to follow the rules here.
Yeah, that's one area that, of course, has sparked a lot of conversation. Right after the announcement, we saw a 4% spike in DFI's stock price. All right, let's take a look at what else is also being proposed in terms of more targeted queries. And that's where the SGX RegCo is hoping to or proposing to refine its approach to post-listing queries and obligations. So this is where they are trying to fine-tune it so that they don't unnecessarily alarm market watchers or investors by, I guess, over asking or making too much of a scene in terms of the approach they're having right now. So making it more calibrated. So some of the engagement might go behind the scenes, talk in private in some cases. What do you make of this review, or at least a recalibration of their approach?
Yeah, this is what I mean when I say SGX RegCo is a bit inconsistent or schizophrenic, because in a way, right, all these disclosure queries and trading queries kind of are brought in basically to support a disclosure-based regime. You want to make sure there's enough information out there. But now, by SGX RegCo publicly telling the whole market, we're going to issue less trading queries, fewer trading queries, and fewer disclosure queries. How do you think issuers are going to behave? Basically they say, well, we may hold back on disclosure, for example. How is that consistent with a disclosure-based regime? So I just don't understand, right? So to me, it raises the question about, is SGX just SGX RegCo because it's part of a listed company? Is it just dialing back some of its regulatory responsibilities to try to have more listings? And I'm quite concerned about these moves.
Yeah, do you think that puts more onus on the issuers or the retail investors to do more of their homework? Yeah,
but, we don't have legal recourse. And of course, they say they're going to look at that. But you kind of now are allowing a car to speed faster, but you haven't put in the brakes. Maybe the brakes will come 2 years later and you just don't know what the brakes look like, right? To me, we are in an environment now which I'm actually quite concerned the way we are heading.
Okay, so another piece of the proposal is the financial watch list. And this is where if a company's not doing too well, for example, reporting losses for 3 straight years, they will be part of this financial watch list and they have to turn things around. But the issue here is once you're on this watch list, the perceptions of this company takes a bit of a hit. And that's where there is potentially an unintended impact on business confidence and then financing as well. Do you think this is a good move to adjust the approach to this financial watch list?
I think this is basically among the worst of the proposals, to put it bluntly, because you need a mechanism, right, to exit poor quality companies. What SGX seems to be saying, RegCo seems to be saying, we need to do as much as possible to keep these companies alive. If you look at many of these companies, historically, when they are on the watch list, yes, SGX said because they are on the watch list, it makes it even more difficult for them to recover. But many of them have terrible business, terrible governance, and so on, right? And most exchanges, right, you look at U.S. exchanges, they have a minimum trading price of US $1. If you don't meet it, you have to delist. Malaysia has its watch list or so, which is based on financials and also based on modified audit opinions. If you have those, you go on a watch list. If you can't address the issues, you go out. So exchanges need to have some way, right, of pushing out poor quality companies. SGX RegCo is just proposing to keep them. And at the end of the day, we're going to have all these, sometimes we call it zombie companies, right, remaining on the stock exchange. I don't think that's good at all.
All right. So you talked about this removal of the watch list, more targeted queries and other ideas. How does this compare with what's happening elsewhere?
My impression looking at the proposals, we kind of look around the world, we say we pick and choose the stuff we like, and then we ignore some of the other things, right, that the other stock exchange have. Let me just give you an example. SGX RegCo and SGX is delegated a lot of powers by MAS. For example, approval of main board listing, right, that's with SGX RegCo, with SGX. But in Malaysia, the Securities Commission have to approve. And some major decisions, actually Securities Commission has to approve. So there's a stronger or more robust regulatory structure in some of these markets. So we delegate so much powers to SGX, and then SGX RegCo is kind of conflicted, right? Because, of course, it's part of a listed company with commercial and regulatory roles. So to me, right, we kind of just picking some of the stuff we like in other markets and then ignoring some of the other bits, right? And that's kind of quite concerning.
All right, perhaps a step forward in the right direction, but deeper conversations needed to be had when it comes to potential market reform. We've been in conversation with Prof. Mak. He is the Professor of Accounting and Director at the Centre for Investor Protection at the NUS Business School at the National University of Singapore. Prof. Mak, thanks so much for your time and insights today. Hoping to catch up again soon.
Well, so welcome. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Stay Money FM 89.3.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.